name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Hello, this is Muhammad Suleiman Ahmadzai with a new session for you, friends. In this video, we are working with the calculator. The calculator is available in Category C. Let's go to the App List section. Here, we can see that the calculator is available. We can, for example, open the calculator. For example, in Run itself, when we go to Run, we just need to type calc. When we type it, it opens the calculator. But the best of all is the search, where we just type a single C or even CA. It opens the calculator for us. When we want to open the calculator from here, from the search section, in the open part, we understand that open opens the item in the usual way, and it has some modes. The calculator has modes. We can directly tell it, when you open the calculator, open it for us in which mode. It can be in standard mode, where we can do multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. Or it can be in scientific mode, where, for example, it can perform operations like sine, cosine, tangent, cotangent, and so on. Well, in short, whichever mode you want, you can change its mode later. Here first, directly. That is, for example, if we want, we can directly tell it to open in that mode. When we are inside the calculator, this part is called the title bar, the menu bar. We call this part the control box. In this control box, for example, there is minimize. Maximize is complete, which shows it as a full screen program. It has restore and close options. Until it's maximized, even in the history section, that is, when it's in restore mode, it doesn't show the history. It shows the history here. Otherwise, if it's maximized, since there's more space, the history will directly show you what we've previously calculated. In the memory section and in the history section. Well, usually the calculator doesn't look like this in standard mode. That's why we bring it up in standard mode. Our calculator has shortcuts. Alt 1, Alt 2, Alt 3, Alt 4. Alt 1 takes us to the standard calculator mode. If we don't use the shortcuts, Alt 1, 2, 3, 4, we can use this option here instead. The standard calculator is the first of the calculator modes, and then come its converters. In the modes, the standard calculator is the first calculator we have. Obviously, it's a calculator that's just for operations like multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction, or some other operations that have been added, like raising to a power or calculating percentages. We can use those as well, whether we use the mouse to do it, or whether we enter numbers using the numeric keypad. For example, you entered, say, 5 that you want to add. In the example 5 plus, before you enter the next number, if at any point you want to reset, you can do that. For instance, let's say you tried entering 3 numbers. You want to clear this 333. Obviously, we use this cross X button for that. It works like a backspace for 1 digit. But what I wanted to say is, no, I want it to completely reset. Make it totally 0. I want to enter the number again from the beginning. So, for that, we have the C button, or CE. C. For example, let's say you chose 5 plus 3. You haven't pressed equals yet to get 8. But we wanted to reset just this 3, to remove it, so I can enter another number instead. So we just press the C button. Without making the 5 turn to 0, it only makes the last number 0. For example, let's say I didn't want to do 5 plus 3. I wanted to do 5 plus 6, where I say, no, that was a mistake. Again, we press the C button. We say, I wanted to do 5 plus 2. Then we tell it to calculate the result. It directly gives the result, 7. Or for example, we say, I want to do 7 plus, say, 6. Or later we realize. We say we want this calculation to reset to 0. Again, we press the C button. This 1 resets both of them to 0. The C only resets the lower cell to 0. On the keyboards themselves, we also have this procedure. On the keyboards themselves, you also have a key for it. What happens when we press it directly? It either performs the C function or acts as a cancellation, and it's the last cancel. And for backspace itself, we also have a button here. We can use that. These are the 4 keys we have here. And this plus minus key as well. For example, here it says -5. On my laptop keyboard, all 4 of these top keys are available. We can use them from there. So try to use these operations after the C and close functions we have. For example, here we have multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, and other things you understand. For example, if we want to tell it 8 to the power of 2, it will directly calculate the power for you. Or, for example, we enter 2 to the power of 2. Or, for example, we enter 3 to the power of 2. That means it will multiply 3 by 3. It will directly give you, for example, 9. In Polize, we can also do other things. For example, here we can work with percentages. Percentages were used. The percent sign wasn't available. For example, if someone tells you to calculate 30% of $100, you would write here $100 times 30 divided by 100. The result would be $3 for you. 30% of $100 would be $3. Now, it's done more easily. You don't need this procedure anymore. So what do? For example, $100 times 30%. Now it directly gives you the percentage. Let's say you go somewhere to sell your gold ring. For example, here they tell you that they take 10% less than the market. Let's say they appraise this ring for you. They weigh your ring. Let's say it's 4 grams. For grams, they calculate that, okay, for grams is currently 4,800 Afghanis. That's the price per gram. They multiply it by 4,800 Afghanis. So, for example, it comes out to around 19,200. They tell you, I'll deduct 10% from this amount. I'll take 10% as profit. Then they continue with the procedure. So what do they do next? They multiply by 10%. 10% comes out to 1,920 Afghanis. Well, my point was to show you this percentage, which we could use in this way. So this is the standard calculator. When we perform operations, if we go to the history section, it shows us the actions we've done today. If we want to bring back any of those operations again, so it brings them up for us here. If we want, we can clear the history so that it doesn't show anything. All right, that was about the standard calculator. The second calculator we have is called scientific, and we can access it with Alt-2. Alt-1 was its shortcut. Alt-2, Alt-3, Alt-4. The scientific calculator lets us perform operations like sine, cosine, tangent, cotangent, logarithm, and some other functions. The third calculator we have is the programmer. This one is mainly used just for conversions. For example, we have the binary numbering system. We can go from octal numbering system to decimal, or from decimal numbering system to hexadecimal. So we move on to numbering systems for those who are programmers. Sometimes they need to exchange numbers or do mathematical operations. They do that work or they use calculators for it. Well, in the end, these things aren't used that much for now because currently we have high-level languages. This was in computers, meaning back when low-level language was being used. Low-level language, for example, referred to those computer languages that were binary languages 0101. Now, people who do programming don't use those languages anymore. But when you do coding, when you write, like here, we have some of its codes with us. So I'll show you later from C++. That means all its code is written in English. It doesn't need codes and gaps. That's why this calculator isn't really being used right now. In the old Windows, we also had another calculator called the statistics calculator, but they got rid of it. It was a calculator that engineers could use to do some of their engineering calculations. But over time, we saw that it wasn't being used, so they removed it. We had this feature in Windows 7. There was a standard calculator, and there was a scientific calculator where we could do sine, cosine, tangent. There was also a programmer calculator, and then there was the statistics calculator, which was used for engineering calculations, but since nobody really used it, they just got rid of it. Okay, if we press Alt+4, that's the fourth category or the fourth mode of the calculator. Date calculation. Date calculation lets you calculate dates. For example, someone comes to you and works day by day. Maybe they're doing some repairs or they have an apartment building. They come and work for us, for example. We make a daily contract with them and tell them, whenever you finish building the house, I'll pay you for it. I'll pay you day by day. If you come one day, you get paid for one day. If you come 100 days, you get paid for 100 days. When you finish this house, come and I'll calculate your payment day by day. For example, here we have the contract date and start. For instance, it was at the end of 2023. For example, the contract started on December 1st, 2023, at the very end of 2023, and lasted until about July 1st, 2024. So, during this period, the person we made the contract with handed over the house to us. They ask us for the payments day by day. Here, it automatically tells us how many months it has been. For example, if we hadn't taken it from the start, it added days to their side, because it computes everything for us based on the first day. So that's how much it comes out. From this date to that date, a person worked for 7 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days. The calculation has become difficult. Why should we calculate the payment ourselves? The system has drawn this chart for us. If we can calculate it, 1 year and 1 month is 30 days. Let's multiply 30 days by 7. Well, it's still pretty complicated, but this way it's made easier. He has worked 237 days for you. It's easier if, for example, you have a contract. For instance, if you agreed on 100 Afghanis per day, multiply that by 237, and the total amount you owe him for his work comes to 23,700 at the end. So whatever I've agreed on with him, based on that, these 2 dates will be calculated for you. It will show you the exact day, month, and year. On the other hand, if we want to add or subtract, for example, if we want to add something to a date, like if we add a date to today's date, what date will it give us? For example, with today's date, if we add 2 more years, meaning 3 years and 3 years added to today's date. So after 3 years and say 3 months and, for example, 8 days from today, what date will that be? It will come up automatically for you. For example, this date, meaning it adds to today's date. It will automatically tell you that this date will be Tuesday, February 10th, 2028. Or on the contrary, you can also do subtraction. For example, when you use subtract, if you subtract from today's date, let's say you tell it to subtract 2 years, 1 month, and, for example, 5 days from today's date. It will give you that date, Wednesday, September 28th, 2022. How often is this used? Actually, difference between dates is used more often. For example, if you want to find out someone's age, or sometimes we do this kind of thing. If you only have their birth year, like 1990, it won't really tell you how old they are. Up to half a year. Or for example, I know my own age, but I don't know my exact birth date. Someone might say, for example, I am now 24 years old. They subtract 24. From this year, for example, this year minus 24, so their birth year would be around 2000, which means they are 24 years old. For example, if we want to find out someone's birth year, we just do this. We simply subtract their age from this year. When does the birth date calculation start for you? Alright, let's see what's next. These are calculator modes. The standard mode is used a lot. The others aren't used that much. We also have something called a converter. A converter is used for converting things. I showed you this on your phone today. We have it on our phones. It's used a lot, especially on mobile phones. This currency function doesn't work. Other functions do. The currency function, when tried, after about 20 seconds it tells you offline, please check your internet connection, because the currency doesn't work. Of course, it needs the internet to find out how much the dollar is worth in your currency. So it writes, for example, that this much Afghanis equals this much dollars, and then it shows you the result. Right now, I'm not doing this because, well, it needs to get information from the internet. The other features work, but for that example in the section, we can, for instance, convert some things. For example, milliliter, cubic liter, liter like teaspoon, tablespoon, dessert spoon, cup, fluid cup. We can convert different things. Of course, for example, if we tell it that we want to convert liters to, say, something else. Milliliters. How many milliliters in a liter? 1 liter is 1,000 milliliters. Milliliters. Okay, then we show it and even ask, for example, how many milliliters is 3 liters of water? It should come out to 3,000. You convert it and it becomes 3,000 milliliters. It even shows us some extra information, like how much 3 liters is in gallons according to the US and UK standards, and also how many cups of coffee that would be. For example, 3 liters is about 12 cups of coffee. In short, it does all the conversions. Of course, if we tell it things like tablespoon, teaspoon, for example, if we say 5 tablespoons or 30 seconds depending on the grain, it will calculate each one individually, and if I clear all 30, it will remove them completely. So here, for example, if we tell it that 5 tablespoons is equal to 15 teaspoons, it will calculate that. And based on the ingredients, it calculates for them in the background. Another section we have is called length, centimeter, meter, millimeter, micrometer, nanometer, kilometer, yard. So whenever I want to convert meters, for example, to inches, feet, kilometers, or something else, let's say, for example, to feet. In America, for instance, height is usually given in feet. Like, how tall are you? For example, they don't use the other system. They use the metric system. If we tell it, my height is, for example, 1.75 meters in feet would be 5.5 feet. It also gives the height in yards, and here as well. It gives the measurement in centimeters and also in millimeters. It even gives it in blasts. Comes out to 9.4 blasts. I calculate this. So, in short, we can get whichever one we want. Kilometers, inches, calculate inches. Let's say, convert inches to centimeters. For example, let's ask it how many centimeters are in 10 inches. Comes out to 25.4 centimeters. So it converts it. The converter does the job really well. It makes our work much easier. It has this feature. Here we can, for example, convert many other things, kilograms to pounds, pounds to ounces, to stones, and various things to grams. For example, something that's used a lot is converting kilograms to pounds. In America, people don't use kilograms. In every country, these things are different. For example, their gallon is different. The units of measurement are different, and they never use kilograms. In Afghanistan, they ask kilos. Here, they ask pounds. They always use pounds. If you've watched WWE, they always say, so-and-so is 200-something pounds. They never say kilograms because they don't use those units. For centimeters, they use inches. Even when they measure someone's height, they use feet like he's 1.5 feet tall, not centimeters or meters. So in every way, the units of measurement are different. Again, if we want to convert, I'm 98 kilos. That would be 216 pounds. Way around. Someone might tell you the opposite. They might say, for example, I'm 200 pounds. So you don't really get how much that is in kilos, right? How many kilos is that weight? You know what I mean? You understand 200 pounds. So this person is 90 kilos. So we can convert it like that too. At the same time, how many tons is that? US ton. For example, UK ton. And how much does a horse or an elephant weigh? For example, based on percentage. For someone whose weight is, let's say, for example, let me say my own weight. Right now, I'm 98 kilos. So currently, I make up 0.02% of an elephant's weight. Besides these converters, we also have temperature. Temperature, for example, Celsius to Fahrenheit, Fahrenheit to Celsius. We can convert many other things as well. For instance, let's convert Celsius to Fahrenheit in 4 hours. For example, let's ask it right now, for instance, how much is 25 degrees Celsius in Fahrenheit? It becomes -3 degrees. I mean, sometimes I don't understand. I think, for example, -5 degrees. If we tell it that in another country, -5 degrees would be like -40 or 50 degrees. We calculate based on Celsius. Celsius and Fahrenheit are exactly different. Here, 25 degrees is considered warm. It's actually called completely warm when it's 25 degrees. But in Celsius, it's actually -3 degrees. We have energy. If we want to convert energy, thermocalories, food calories, Ford. For example, if we want to convert the calories in food, for example, to a, say, thermocalorie, if we tell it over 4 hours, how much is 1,000 calories? 1,000 calories are 1,000 calories. Is 1 calorie, is 1 kilocalorie, 4,100. For example, how many kilocalories does that make? And in terms of food, for slices of cake, just 4 pieces or 2 cakes. You see, for them, that makes up 1,000 calories. See how much they say sweet things are fattening. They say if it's 2 pieces of bread or, for example, meat, it doesn't add up to 1,000 calories. Again, when it's kilocalories, the number gets high. For 1,000 kilocalories is on everything. Many ask, why do we gain weight so quickly? Because they write calories. Even if it's 20 less, it shows up. For 1,000 kilocalories becomes a lot. For humans, well, after the energy section, we have area. It's like how we have square meters, square centimeters, square millimeters, square inches. Different units like hectare, yard, percent. So I could say, for example, if we convert square meters to square centimeters, how much does it become? For example, 10 square meters. For instance, 1 lakh square centimeters. 2 feet and other units are also used. Even paper sheets are calculated by number of sheets. If we stack one of the A4 sheets on top of each other from this area, it would be 165 sheets. If we lay them out, that's how much space it would take up. It becomes 10 square meters. We have speed. For example, kilometers per hour, which is called kilometers per hour. If we want to calculate this in other units, like miles per hours, or in different ways, for example, if we take miles per hour. Usually, for cars, we use kilometers, like 10 kilometers per hour. If an engine moves, it would be in miles per hour. For example, 6 kilometers, 6 miles per hour, it will calculate the miles per hour for you. It will show you how much a mile is, and even calculate each power for you. Overall, we need something called time. If we want to tell you why we convert hours. For example, millimeter, millisecond, or microsecond, we say, convert it to seconds. Even for things like diesel, or if we want to calculate by year. For example, how many seconds are in a year? It comes out to this many seconds. Or how many minutes or how many hours are in a year? Or how many days is that? It's 365 days, or 25. What is 365 days? Overall, we can use conversion. For example, it will draw this out for you again. This is needed for conversion. For example, 1 year is this many weeks, this many hours, this many minutes, and this many seconds. Where is direct itself for us? In the power section, for example, we can convert electricity, like, for instance, from kilowatts to horsepower, or to watts, or to whatever unit. For example, let's say the household electricity consumption was 81 kilowatts. How many watts is that? That's 81,000 watts, and it wants to show you the correct answer. All right, next we have data. Data, for example, kilobyte, megabyte, gigabyte, kilobyte, or terabyte. When we want to calculate these, we can tell it, for instance, to convert gigabytes to megabytes or, say, kilobytes for us. Or, for example, to something else, like to convert it to bytes, for instance. For example, I ask, how many bytes are in 1 gigabyte? 1 billion bytes is a bit less. But if we say, in terms of megabytes, it's 1,000. The exact number is 1024, which we studied in the Windows slide notes. 1024 makes up 1 gigabyte. They've really rounded it off. If it were taken exactly, something got stretched out. It got rounded off. It even included the 24, for example, from 1024 to 1000 terabytes. How many gigabytes are in 1 terabyte? For example, gigabyte is something that my director drew, but it's not there anymore. Gigabyte is here. A gigabyte is 1124 gigabytes. For example, that makes 1 terabyte. Terabyte, well, they've rounded off the 24. Here, I've drawn for you how much a terabyte is. I'll show you how much it adds up to, and how many DVDs, try 198 DVDs. How much memory does that make? That's 1 terabyte. If you want, I can give you some extra information here as well. In the pressure section, if you want, for example, it converts this pressure. For instance, if we tell it that the atmosphere, for example, to convert it to kilopascals. Say you want this many of them. It converts atmospheric pressure. In this way, it converts it to English units. If we want to convert angles, for example, how many radians or gradians is 90 degrees? 90 degrees, for instance, is about 1.3 radians. So we have various unit converters here that we can use in different places. And finally, there's the About section, which gives information about the program itself. And finally, dear friends, we ask that if you found the videos useful, please support us and help the channel grow. Like the videos and subscribe to the channel, and we hope to see you in the next sessions. Goodbye.